Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for using my friend's logic against her and making her cry? I, 36 female, went no contact with my narcissistic family last year as I was done being their scapegoat. My friend was encouraging me to call my mother and reconcile for Mother's Day, and I explained, again, the emotional and mental abuse I went through and her refusal to take accountability or seek therapy. She then lectured me on how it's hard being a parent. She's a parent, I'm not, that as the eldest you should have helped your mother around the house more and with your younger siblings. And that I should let bygones be bygones and call my mother for Mother's Day. I told her, so you think if I had done more chores and accepted more parentification as a kid then I wouldn't have been abused? If it's too hard to be decent to your kids then you shouldn't be a parent. Maybe you should have helped your abusive ex-husband around the house more. Maybe you shouldn't have had dinner 10 minutes late. BC, you know his job is stressful and it's hard being a provider and father. Next month is Father's Day, you should call and reconcile with him. How could I as a child stop the abusive behavior of an adult when as an adult you couldn't stop your husband from abusing you? She cried and walked off. Our mutual friends agree she was wrong to pressure me to reconcile with my mother, but she meant well and didn't understand, and you took it too far. I did it to make a point on how abuse isn't okay from anyone, even your parents. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Would I be the a-hole for spraying some kid with my garden hose daily after he walks all over our lawn? I, 37 male, live with my wife, 37 female, and son and daughter, 9 and 11 respectively. Recently, there has been this kid who comes by our house after playing soccer and either rides his bike or walks over the lawn with his cleats on his way home. It started out as me giving him stern looks whenever I saw him, then it slowly progressed to me asking him to just go around. The last time I asked him to stop, he made a point to stomp extra hard and twist his feet into the grass to piss me off. Since then I've just been hosing him. The first time I sprayed him with the hose he ran off, but then for some reason he just started standing there while I hose him like he enjoys it. It's now progressed to me sitting on my lawn chair pointing my hose at him, and him just staring at me while he does so. Sometimes we even make small talk. I am not gonna lie, it started off as a really bitter relationship, but I've actually gotten to know the kid quite well. We talk for maybe 15 to 20 minutes every day, and he doesn't seem to mind being hosed down after sweating hard playing soccer. He comes by daily and we just shoot the crap while I hose him, and he stands there for a bit. Wife told me I need to stop. Even after I explained it to her, she said I'm making us look like childish idiots. I guess I could stop, but honestly it's really funny waiting for him to come by and I see no harm in it. Would I be the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband the nanny is in charge? I want to preface this by saying that I am aware this is a very privileged issue, but I'm trying to get some perspective on my opinion. My husband and I have 3 kids that are 10 months, 3 years, and 6 years old. My husband has a high-profile job and it means he's gone often. I work a regular 9 to 5. We originally used daycare for our oldest, but my middle was born right when the pandemic began, so we hired a nanny. She originally worked when I did. But by the time baby came around, I was very overwhelmed doing bath and bedtime on my own, on top of developing postpartum depression. After a breakdown, we spoke with the nanny and she agreed to adjust her hours, so she's helping me with dinner, bath, and bed. We've gotten close over the past 6 months doing this. In many ways, she's become like a third parent to the kids. She's so good with them. We've created a routine that works well. I tend to the baby during bath and bed, she handles the older two. It's a nice rhythm and my mental health has gotten so much better. My husband isn't traveling all the time, but most nights, he isn't even home for dinner and bed. He will help me weekends he's home. But because he's gone so often, he's reluctant to be firm with the kids. There are times he's come home when our nanny is there. He tries to help her with bath and bed, but allows the boys to roughhouse, lets them break the routine, and it seriously throws them off and delays bedtime. My nanny shared with me she feels awkward. Obviously she doesn't want to undermine her employer, but it just makes her job harder. But my husband also doesn't want her to go home when he arrives, as he says he can't handle it alone. I told him if that's the case, then he needs to defer to the nanny and follow her lead. She knows our boys best and she has to deal with the aftermath when they don't listen and give her a hard time. My husband feels that she's just an employee and he's the dad. His salary does pay for her. However, I don't feel this is fair to her. I told him he either follows her lead for bed and bath or he doesn't help at all. He told me I'm allowing the nanny to take over and replace him. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for being embarrassed of my girlfriend's cosplay? I, 25 male, and my GF, 24, had a double mastectomy 5 years ago. She had breast cancer, and thankfully made a full recovery. Unlike a lot of women, she didn't have any reconstructive surgery. This was before I met her. I'm a big anime nerd, and last weekend I invited her to a small anime con with me. She's seen a few episodes of my favorite shows, but she's not into anime. She does like cosplay, though, and she works seasonally as an SFX artist at a haunted house near us. So when I asked her to go to the con with me, she asked if she could cosplay, and I said sure. She got very excited and said I was going to love her costume, so I'll admit I thought she was going to do something sexy for me. Well, not exactly. The day of the convention comes, and she showed up at my house cosplaying Dobby from MHA, specifically a look he has later in the manga. It's a long white coat over white pants, no shirt. Her entire chest was exposed and she'd obviously spend hours applying burn makeup. She has short hair that she dyes constantly. This time she bleached it white and dyed a few red streaks. I wasn't expecting her to show up without a shirt. Her burn scar makeup only covered half her chest, so you could clearly see her mastectomy scar. It wasn't a very attractive costume, especially since she'd gone all out with the scars and made them look raised and kind of realistic. We went to the con, and while a lot of people came up to take photos with her, I noticed several others looking at her chest. That evening, she said I'd been quiet all day, and I honestly told her I was a little embarrassed that she was flaunting her mastectomy scar like that. She got mad and said she was making the best of her situation and said I was being insensitive, and she's been distant ever since. I'm starting to feel guilty. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for not paying any child support? My ex-girlfriend, Claire, 35 female, got pregnant while we were dating. Although she told me she just wanted to be friends, I was ready to be a father. However, she met someone else, Becca, who didn't want me around, so they asked me to cancel my paternal rights. At the time, I was torn because I wanted to be there for my child, but I also felt that if they didn't want me around, it was best to waive my rights. After fighting for a while, I eventually gave up because it was clear that they didn't want me there. Fast forward 13 years later, Claire and Becca are going through some stuff, and they want me to pay child support. However, the court had already ruled that since I waived my paternal rights, I am not legally obliged to pay child support. Despite this, Claire is calling me a crap and a deadbeat, and she's even calling my family and getting them involved. While I understand her frustration, I don't think it's appropriate for her to be involving my family in this matter. Next story. Am I the a-hole for taking my brother-in-law to small claims court over art supplies? A bit of context, I, 29 male, like to draw and try other mediums as well. As such, I've accumulated a lot of art supplies over the past few years. My wife, Sally, 27 female, also dabbles a bit, and we have converted one of the rooms in our home to an art studio of sorts. There's easily a few $1,000s worth of art supplies in that room, and we tend to keep it locked for that reason. Most important to me are my pencils and markers, which were not cheap, chart pack for those who care. On to the story. Sally and I had her family over for her aunt's birthday a few weeks back, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law brought their kids with them, 7 female and 6 male. We had forgotten to lock the door to the room that day. About an hour into the party, I noticed that both kids were nowhere to be seen, so I asked my sister-in-law if she knew where they were. She said that they were drawing in the other room. I asked if my wife was with them, and she said she, sister-in-law to be clear, not Sally, just told them which room it was in. I immediately rushed over to the art room and found it was a total mess. Most devastatingly was the fact that all my markers were ruined because that kids were using way too much force casing the tips to fray. I yelled at them to get out and they started crying. My brother-in-law ran over and started yelling at me saying they're just kids and it's just markers. I told him that the markers alone were $17 a piece and he said I was stupid for paying that much. Sally tried to defuse the situation, but my brother-in-law started yelling at her too, saying we can't have this much art supplies and not expect kids wanting to use it. I told him he's paying to replace the markers and other supplies they ruined, and he told me to go F myself and left. Everyone left shortly after that. I totaled up the damages and I needed to replace about $375 and found that the kids drew on a piece I had spent the past week working on as well as ruining a finished piece Sally did. I sent him a bill and he blocked me. So I talked with my friend who was lawyer and had him draft a claim for small claims court and a letter to send my brother-in-law. I paid him for this, of course. My wife is in agreement about this, but her family has been mobbing us, telling us we're being ridiculous over some markers. Only my father-in-law, who also has taken up painting recently, and my other sister-in-law say that brother-in-law has to pay. Am I the a-hole? I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.